Hola.
Anyways, the expeditions led to great wealth into Spain, income for the state where Spain became a dominant power of Europe for the next 2 centuries. Spain, with all the extra coin, got their hands in everything. The world was at the taking. Mine, all mine. And they established colonies in North Africa from the Atlantic Moroccan coast to Libya.
Hola.
A lot of these areas are still under Spanish control today. The Spanish Empire was actually the first global empire. It was also one of the largest empires in world history. Yeah, we the largest. In the 16th century, Spain and Portugal actually competed with one another for European global exploration and colonial expansion in opening of trade routes across the oceans. But Spain's ruthless conquistadors, such as these guys, later followed Columbus's trail, seizing sections of the American mainland for Spain. By 1600, Spain controlled nearly all of present-day Mexico and Central America, a large strip of South America, all the biggest Caribbean islands, and Florida. That was a lot of work.
I just want you to know that I will throw you down the stairs.
Spanish conquistadors even removed the Aztec, Inca, and Mayan governments with help from local factions and took control of vast stretches of land. You backstabbing little. The New World Empire was actually pretty disappointing at first, as the natives had little to trade. Disease was everywhere, like smallpox and measles that the colonizers brought with them, devastating the native populations, especially in the densely populated regions of the Aztec, Maya, and Inca civilization. And this reduced the economic potential of the conquered areas. But then silver was found, and in the 1520s, large-scale extraction of silver from the rich deposits of Mexico began. Silver shipments went into the Spain economy, leading to the importation of luxuries and grain. We love silver, and a little of that gold too. The new colonies sent huge cargoes of silver, gold, and other riches back to Spain. They enjoyed a monopoly on this trade and grew into one of Europe's richest cities. So all this led to Spain enjoying a cultural golden age in the 16th and 17th centuries. They dominated the oceans with its experienced navy and ruled the European battlefield with its fearsome and well-trained infantry. But of course we can't forget religion, and it spread strongly through the Spanish Empire. Spain even brought the Christians to the New World, bringing a strong role in the expansion of Spain's empire. Conquering with religion worked in the past, right? Now, it wasn't just the Americas that the Catholic monarchs thought should be theirs. Let's think bigger and take it all. So Isabel and Fernando embroiled Spain into European affairs by marrying their 5 children into the royal families of Portugal, the Holy Roman Empire, and England. You go there, you go there, and you go there. After Isabel's death in 1504 and Fernando's in 1516, the thrones passed to their grandson Carlos I, who arrived in Spain from Flanders in 1517, age 17. In 1519, Carlos was succeeded to the Habsburg Islands in Austria and was elected Holy Roman Emperor. Wow, I'm a Roman emperor and get to wear this. But it meant he now ruled all of Spain, the lower countries, Austria, several Italian states, parts of France and Germany, and the expanding Spanish colonies in the Americas. That's a lot to do. Spain's world empire probably reached its greatest territorial extent in the late 18th century, but it was under the Habsburg dynasty in the 16th and 17th century that it reached the peak of its power, and then it started to decline. It seems the experts say they just became too busy to manage it all. Spain's first Habsburg ruler, Charles I, became central to the struggles of all of Europe, and because of his widely scattered domains, was not often in Spain. Too busy. I'm too busy. The armies were too spread out without having enough of a population to support everywhere, even with the Allies. Others noticed this, the breaking up of power, and started an 80-year war from the 1560s. Yeah, not 20 or 40 or 65, but 80 exactly. The Dutch armies came in and consumed much of the Spanish expenditure during the later 16th century. Other expensive failures came as well, like the invasion of Protestant England in 1588 that produced the worst military disaster in Spanish history. Economic and administrative problems weakened the Spanish economy as well. We got problems everywhere. Rising inflation, financially draining wars in Europe, and ongoing aftermath of expulsion of the Jewish and the Moors from Spain. And Spain's growing dependency on silver imports combined to cause several bankruptcies that caused economic crisis throughout the country. Wow, that was a mouthful. But it all started to suck. So much of the fabulous wealth from Spain's American and other colonies was squandered on lavish royal lifestyles and on indulgences that did little to better their lives of ordinary Spaniards. You know, I like that dress. I like your shoes. We need more. The result was a deeply divided country, repeated battles, a fair share of external wars, and the population got poorer and poorer. There was also the Great Plague of 1596 to 1602, killing 600,000 to 700,000 people, or about 10% of the population. And economically, the plague destroyed the labor force as well, creating a psychological blow to an already problematic Spain. Suck became suckier. Then the Spanish Golden Age started the Spanish-speaking countries of Latin America, with the political decline and fall of the Habsburg had begun. But through it all, art and expression became popular. Europe's greatest architects and painters were born. Times were crappy, so might as well paint. This guy, and this guy. Music as well. This guy, and this guy. Spanish literature blossomed as well. And yet Spain being weak, backward-looking monarchs, a highly conservative church, and an idle nobility allowed the economy to stagnate, leading to food shortages and gross inequalities between the haves and have-nots. Spain lost Portugal and faced revolts in Catalonia, Sicily, and Naples. Silver shipments from the Americas shrank as well. But this was also Europe's age of enlightenment. Spain's powerful church were at odds with the rationalism that trickled in from France. 2/3 of the land was in the hands of the nobility and church, and inequality and unrest were everywhere. Yeah, it's not for everyone. Out of confusion, Spain actually declared war on France, only to make peace with the French Republic 2 years later. Let's make war, then peace. With this lost economic power, Spain became culturally and politically a follower of absolute France, but not quite an official ally. An example was in 1805, a combined Spanish-French navy was beaten by the British fleet under Admiral Nelson off of here, putting an end to Spanish sea power. Thought I'd throw that in. But in 1807, French forces poured into Spain, supposedly on the way to Portugal. Yeah, we're just passing through. Surprise. But in 1808, this had led to becoming a French occupation of Spain.
You don't see that every day.
Tricked you good. And this guy was forced to abdicate in favor of Napoleon's brother, Joseph Bonaparte. Hey bro, could you rule Spain for me? I'm kind of busy. It happened like this. After briefly opposing revolutionary France early in the French Revolutionary Wars, Spain was into an uneasy alliance with its northern neighbor, only to be blockaded by the British. This led to the invasion of Spain in 1808 under Napoleon I, Emperor of the French, triggering the Peninsular War. The 2nd of May, 1808, was the beginning of the popular Spanish resistance against Napoleon. Napoleon ridiculed the army as the worst in Europe. Bonjour, you guys are the worst. Spain initially sided against France in the Napoleonic Wars, but the defeat of her army early in the war led to this guy, the Spanish leader at the time, to align with the revolutionary French. The former Spanish king was dethroned by Napoleon, who put his own brother on the throne, and the Spaniards said, hell no, and that's not going to happen. In Madrid, crowds revolted, so the Spanish, as they did in their ancient past, retreated into the mountains to regroup and launch new attacks and raids. Guerrilla forces sprang up all over the country and tied down huge numbers of Napoleon's troops.
I'm coming from the north, from the south. You don't even know. I'm just like exploding into action.
It was a massive drain on Napoleon's military and economic resources. Spain was even aided by the British and Portuguese, led by the Duke of Wellington. Yeah, we helped. Across the country, Spaniards took up arms, guerrilla style, reinforced by British and Portuguese forces, and the French were finally driven out after their defeat at Vittoria in 1813. But this was the reason as well. After Napoleon's disastrous 1812 campaign in Russia, Napoleon began to recall his forces for the defense of France against the advancing Russian, leaving his forces in Spain increasingly unmanned and on the defense against the advancing Spanish, British, and Portuguese armies. This is really starting to suck again. At the Battle of Vittoria in 1813, an allied army under the Duke of Wellington decisively defeated the French, and in 1814, this guy was restored as King of Spain. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in the Americas, Spain lost all of its North and South American territories, except for Cuba and Puerto Rico, in a complex series of revolts. Spain was at war with Britain, and the British Navy cut off its ties to the overseas empire. The colonies then achieved economic independence from Spain and set up temporary government with no mother country involved. Yay, we're free. Multiple revolutions enabled the colonies to break free from the mother country. In 1842, the armies of the generals this guy and this guy defeated the last Spanish forces. The final defeat came at this place in southern Peru, all correctly pronounced. Barely able to hold itself together, Spain had little chance of maintaining its few remaining colonies. In 1898, Spain lost Cuba, the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico after being defeated in the Spanish-American War by the United States.
Where was I?